Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
The parallel supercomputer of the 1980s was the most complex computing machinery in the world. That was the reason the community of 25,000 vector supercomputer scientists avoided programming the parallel supercomputer because it was too difficult to program an ensemble of 65,536 processors. I was the sole programmer of 16 massively parallel supercomputers of the 1980s. I was the only supercomputer scientist in the world that had the confidence and possessed the command of materials that was needed to parallel process across an ensemble of 64 binary thousand tightly coupled processors that shared nothing between each other. In the 1980s, I was the only supercomputer scientist in the world that had both the scientific and technological knowledge that was needed to deliver extensive public lectures on the parallel supercomputer. My extensive videotaped lectures on supercomputing can be watched on youtube.com/Emeagwali. I was at the ground zero of supercomputing, and that is the reason Philip Emeagwali is the subject of school reports on Inventors. Parallel processing is the greatest achievement in the world of supercomputers that resulted in the groundbreaking discovery that redefined the frontiers of knowledge in mathematics, physics, and computer science. I discovered parallel processing because my starting point was from first principles or the laws of physics. That's where I invented both new partial differential equations of calculus and their companion new partial difference equations of algebra. I was also the research code physicist that parallel processed 64 binary thousand computer codes and did so across a new internet, that is a new global network of tightly coupled processors that were identical to each other and that encircled a globe, and did so in the manner the internet encircled the earth. If I had followed the advice of Gene Amdahl or Seymour Cray, I would not have discovered that practical parallel processing will become the vital technology that will underpin every supercomputer of today. I invented practical parallel processing, and I did so at a time the supercomputer textbooks said that it will forever remain impossible or at least impractical. The forthcoming fusion of massively parallel processing with artificial intelligence will give birth to a new breed of fastest and smartest supercomputers. Such supercomputers can learn and detect and connect the dots amongst the important features in large data sets of seemingly unrelated facts. Such supercomputers can process and understand the realms of data and process them to discover new knowledge that would otherwise remain elusive. Today, robots are learning to think like humans. With supercomputing, humans will learn to think like robots, not vice versa. The supercomputer is used to increase productivity. Parallel processing inexorably changed the supercomputer, and the technology is here to stay. I chose to parallel process in the 1970s and 80s, and at a time it was forbidden by Amdahl's law as described in supercomputer textbooks that were published onwards of April 1967. My experiment of the 4th of July 1989 that I conducted across my ensemble of 64 binary 1000 processors made the news headlines because it revealed never before recorded supercomputer speeds that I recorded by parallel processing across processors. I discovered that initial boundary value problems of mathematical physics that are impossible to solve on only one processor are possible to solve across millions upon millions of commodity off-the-shelf processors that were within a massively parallel supercomputer. My discovery of practical parallel processing that occurred on the 4th of July 1989 in Los Alamos, New Mexico, United States, changed the way we look at the computer and opened the door to further experiments on new computers that might be beyond the parallel supercomputer. Faster supercomputers contribute to the expansion of human knowledge. The reason I was the only full-time programmer of the most massively parallel supercomputers of the 1980s was that the technology was mocked, abandoned as a dead-end road. Seymour Cray, the leader in the computing field of vector processing, vehemently argued that it will be a huge waste of everybody's time to pursue parallel processing. Seymour Cray and Gene Amdahl each believed that he would be dead before parallel processing becomes the technology that powers all supercomputers. On the contrary, Seymour Cray and Gene Amdahl both lived to see parallel processing become the crown jewel inside every supercomputer. My parallel processed solution of the grand challenge problem of supercomputing proved that both Seymour Cray and Gene Amdahl were wrong when they asserted that parallel processing is a waste of time.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.